You're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM, and this is Angela Harden, General Manager of WHCR. This is the third week that we are broadcasting a brand new show called 125th Street and Beyond. The host is Barbara Askins, President and CEO of the 125th Street Business Improvement District in Harlem, better known as the 125 BID. Here in Harlem, Askins successfully created the first and only business improvement district in the Harlem community. She is guiding the development of result oriented strategies involving retail plans, rezoning for future growth, cultural sustainability, and evaluating the interplay between science, technology, and businesses. Her public involvement strategies have led to successes such as the annual Harlem Holiday Lights, the first cultural bonus incentive in NYC to be used to shape the future of 125th Street as a cultural destination. Working closely with NYPD and 12 other city agencies, she is driving an interagency and community involvement approach that is addressing crime, homelessness, mental illness, sanitation, and streetscape improvements. Barbara, it's
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon, listeners. 125th Street and Beyond is a show about the work we are doing at the 125th Street Business Improvement District, better known as BID, here in Harlem. It is also a show about the relationships we are building with the community, with city agencies, and BIDs around the world. We will be giving updates on what's happening and addressing issues that impact the commercial district. This week, Harlem will pay tribute to one of our great fighters for the people, William Bill Perkins. The viewing will be at First Corinthian Baptist Church this Wednesday from 3 to 9 p.m. and Thursday from 9 to 11 a.m. Service begins at 2 p.m. The 125th Street BID sends condolences and blessings to his family. I met Bill Perkins in the early 1990s. He called me on the phone like around 1993, 1994, and said he wanted to have a meeting with me to discuss the city council race. So we met at Showman's, which was then Showman's Jazz, which was a premier jazz here in Harlem, located on 8th Avenue at the time. And we sat and we talked, and he asked me if I was going to run for city council, because at that particular time, I was also chair of the community board. And I told him, no, I was not going to run. And he said, are you sure? Because if you're going to run, then I'm not going to run. And I assured him that I would not run. But then with his inquisitive mind, he said, why not? You're chair of the community board. You have the business community. I think you have a chance to win. And I explained to him, particularly at that time, city council was not making very much money. And I had just created the Business Improvement District, the first in a community of color. And I wanted to see just what I could do with it, where it could go. And I also had a passion for art. And he said, passion for art? Okay, if that's what you want to do, but if you're not going to run, I am. And so he did run and he won. And members of the city council are on the board of directors for the BID. So he was on our board and we worked with him over all those years. He approved budgets. He helped to launch a Harlem Clean campaign. He provided funds for extra cleaners for the street. He was in the fight with us on the M60 bus because we did not agree with the way the city was rolling it out. He was always looking at the situation from all sides and made sure that those who had less in the community would not be left out. My favorite conversations with him was about Black men and their hats. We talked often about me doing that book because I noticed that when a Black man puts on his hat, he transforms into another person with a different swagger. I always complimented him on his hats because he definitely knew how to wear them. He always acknowledged my workers on the street and let us know if there is anything he could do, just let him know. Most impressive to me is that during the pandemic, when we all worked from home and was shut in, Bill Perkins walked 125th Street every day, sharp as a tack, as we used to say, and always acknowledged the BID during those troubling times. He will truly be missed. Our guest today is Leah Abraham. Leah is an Ethiopian Eritrean immigrant who lives in Harlem. She is a restaurateur and owns a bakery that provides products for many restaurants throughout New York City and has a robust online service where she ships nationwide. And we both have something in common, our passion for the arts. Leah expresses her creativity in the lovely floral arrangements at her restaurant and provides a place for artists to showcase their work. Leah also serves on the BID Board of Directors in the Class A category, representing property owners, and is chair of the Marketing, Promotion, and Events Committee. Leah, welcome to 125th Street and Beyond.
Thank you.
Our theme song is Bet You Didn't Know About That. So we want you to tell our listeners today things that they may not know about you, about your different businesses. And we also want to talk a little bit, Frank, about the problems we face and how the BID works from a board level. I have the pleasure of working with you on an ongoing basis, and we meet weekly, and those are very treasured experiences. But to start this conversation off, can you tell us a little bit about your life in Ethiopia and when you left Ethiopia?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to express my condolences to the Perkins family. I too had the pleasure of knowing him early on when I first came to Harlem. So I would like to just express my condolences at this point. And thank you, Barbara, for having me on your show. So a little bit about myself. I left Ethiopia in 1974 before the revolution, not knowing that I would never go back, that I wouldn't go back for another 20 years or so. We were the lucky ones. My father was transferred to Kenya. So as a family, we moved to Kenya and were never able to go back because during that time, the emperor was imprisoned, the government fell. Many of my family members were either killed or imprisoned. And so we had to flee, and we fled to America. We came here not equipped with language, not really knowing anybody. We were separated. And really it was, one day my father came home. He had met some people that he was going to send us to. He had found a place for my two sisters and I. He sat us around the table. He gave each one of us a family photograph. And he said, well, I can get you to America, get an education. And if you don't, change your name because you're not my child. And he said, from now on, we speak English. And well, yes, we didn't speak English. So, everything sort of happened all at once. And a week later, we boarded a plane and then he said, stay in touch with your family. That was the family photograph. He said, stay in touch with your family, find each other. And that's how I came to America. And we were supposed to write a letter to my parents, and he would then correct the letters and send them back to us. This was pre-internet, telephone calls were expensive, so everything was done by mail. And we didn't think of ourselves as victims because our contemporaries were killed. Our contemporaries were on the field. So we really jumped on this as an opportunity, and here we are. So fast forward, we all stayed in touch. We finished our education, and I think we made our family proud.
And I know that you and your mother and your daughter went back recently. I think it was last year, 3 generations of women, and I remember you talking about looking at the place where you used to live and telling your daughter that story. Can you share some of those precious moments with our listeners?
Yes, it was a bittersweet experience. Going to Ethiopia, we were looking out the window, and I was very emotional, and I was in tears. And my daughter said, "Well, why are you crying?" And I said, I never thought I would go back to a place I called home and checking into a hotel because this was home, and then it wasn't. So it was really actually very special to walk with her through my past, because it took very little to just adjust and go back to that place, and the language was so much a part of me. The culture is so much a part of who I am. It just felt natural.
So how did you get to Harlem?
Well, it's ironic because we used to come to the U.S. As on vacation as kids, and I remember coming to New York the first time I came. I must have been maybe 10 years old, and I remember getting off the plane and somebody telling me, "Don't ever go to Harlem. It's a very dangerous place," only to make it my home today. So that was, I didn't venture into Harlem until later in life. We moved to Westchester. My husband and I had a businesses downtown and moved to Westchester really for the schools. And we would drive through Harlem, and I fell in love with the architecture, the boulevard. It was usually late at night, and there wasn't much going on, but we really fell in love with that corridor, especially the Mount Morris neighborhood. And then I thought, well, it would be wonderful to have a cafe here. I mean, look at these sidewalks, look at this boulevard. Little did we know that it wasn't that sepia tone Harlem that we read about and watched on TV, the Mod Squad Harlem that we saw growing up. But it was where I wanted to set roots. So I saw this little for rent sign and I pursued it. And then here we are at Satipani 23 years later.
So tell us, what does Satipani mean, and a bit about the menu? I mean, it's very interesting how you infuse, all the different Mediterranean foods, and there's a little bit of Ethiopia in there. It's enough to keep the people in Harlem whet their appetites with some of the culture of our soul food. Just tell us just about the name particularly, and how you put together a menu that attracts such a diverse audience of people.
So if you remember, 2000 was a very different Harlem. When we opened the Satipani in Harlem, I wanted it to be our flagship store. At that time, we had 5 different locations. And I really wanted this location to be the most beautiful. And it was, I think, the first version of Harlem was the most beautiful one. We spent a lot of time really thinking about it and making it what we wanted it to look like. And then as we were doing construction, we realized that we didn't have the clientele for high-end restaurant. So we quickly changed gear and made it a bakery, because bakery was affordable to all. And we wanted it to be a place for, a traditional coffee shop where people went and pre-Starbucks coffee shop idea. Satipani means 7 breads, and it's my husband's family name. He comes from a long line of bakers. So I thought the name was perfect, Satipani, 7 breads. And so we incorporated that name and opened that location as a cafe bakery. And it was probably the smartest move we did, because it became a place where people would come once, twice, 3 times a day, because it was just a cup of coffee here, a croissant in the morning. It was a stop for people in the community to make 2-3 times during the course of the day. And we got to know everybody. We got everybody walk through our doors. And then it was 2000, and then, we had to make several adjustments, but that was the idea behind the very first version of Satipani 1.0. And then 2009, the recession happened, and we had to change gears and make it a little bit more of a bakery / light meals. These were survival tactics while maintaining the integrity of the business.
So we're at Satipani 1.3 now, right? Wouldn't you say, with your recent renovation, you changed the decor? It's you can still come and sit and do work and have, which I learned from you, a small cup of cappuccino, because real cappuccino is not made in large cups. So I learned a lot about that. 125th Street, is a bid assessment area, and the property owners pay an additional assessment above the real estate taxes in order for us to grow the area between Morningside and Fifth Avenue. And I'm always asked all the time, why can Setapani be a part of the 125th Street bid? And so it's important to know that you're not only a restaurateur, but you also are a property owner. And so what made you invest in on 125th Street, and why? Tell us just your whole perception of the importance of 125th Street in Harlem and to your business.
There was no question in my mind when we opened Setapani that Harlem would be a place that we would set roots. I fell in love with the community, and as an immigrant, home can be anywhere. But I really felt at home in Harlem, and I needed a community around me. So there was never a question that we would invest and move into the area. Initially, the idea was when we had 5 locations, the idea was that we would open another location on 125th Street. So we wanted to buy property on one of the boulevards, Lenox Avenue or 125th Street. We were fortunate enough to find this property. We bought it. This was early 2000s. We bought that property and managed to keep it despite all the up and downs and the financial up and downs that we've gone through as entrepreneurs. So that enabled me to be a part of the 125th Street bid. And I love the fact that I'm on the boulevard, and yet I feel that the boulevard is the personality. The boulevard is the artery of Central Harlem, the way I see it. And yet it is, there's a conversation that happens between the businesses off the boulevard and what happens on the boulevard, and the people who live there and the relationships, business relationships. So, I've always pushed beyond 125th and beyond idea, because it's there's a marriage there, and we've managed to get there with this board and with the support of Barbara.
And your push is really the reason we have this show, 125th Street and Beyond, because I knew if I had named it just 125th Street, I was going to get a call from you saying, Barbara, the importance of the businesses on the avenues feed off of 125th Street. The success of 125th Street means the success of the other businesses. And even though our structure is a tax assessment and everyone pays taxes, Leah has been in the forefront of pushing of how we can legally, because it is a legal thing, how we can legally include others in the work we do. You are a survivor, Leah Abraham, in spite of all the impediments of small businesses. How are you able to stay afloat? There are so many challenges: access to capital, marketing, and more. And equally challenging these things are equally challenging for small businesses. Is there anything you're willing to share with other small businesses out there that you have learned that may be helpful for them in growing their business? Because I feel that those of us who are here don't share enough of the information. And that's one of the things that I think we would want to accomplish here on this show.
Right. Being an entrepreneur is no easy task. And I want to say that there have been many, many sacrifices. I don't think we talk about sacrifice enough. It's not all rosy. I had to sell my house to maintain the business because I am committed. I really, really am committed to this. I've poured a lot of money. I've put in a lot of, I've put my money where my mouth is. I'm committed to staying in this community. I'm not in passing. And so much so that, my children have seen that commitment and have jumped on board to fulfill my wishes, really, that has somehow translated into becoming their desires. So I don't know what the secret is. I don't know if there is a secret. I think it's hard work. I think it's a lot of sacrifice, but it's also appreciating what we have. I'm not afraid to roll my sleeves up and do any part of the work. I can be in the kitchen, I can be on the floor, I can be at a gala promoting my business. And it takes all that effort to to stay in business, to stay relative, to stay relevant. So that's what I've done, and I've trimmed off where I needed to, and invested where I needed to. So it's a commitment.
So, by being a member of the board, that 125th Street is facing a lot of challenges. We have vacancies. The owners of the property are trying to figure out what the retail mix should be, how to attract people, the challenges of crime, drug use, drug sales on the street. And we'll get into that more. But as a board member who, and I do have a working board. I do work my board members a lot. What do you see is our biggest immediate challenge right now for 125th Street in order to maintain, not just for us, but also for those businesses on the side streets?
So, what I experience is safety and sanitations are the biggest hurdles that we have, to bring businesses to the neighborhood, to the community. We face them every single day. I have had, 20 years ago, Harlem was a different place, and I had major challenges, but nothing like what we're going through today with the mental health issues. The challenges of small businesses, we are held to the highest standards, without the government support. We don't have, I can't afford to give my staff insurance. I can't afford to provide all those things that major companies can. And yet I'm competing with those big box clients, with those big box companies that are in the area, and we need them to keep their doors open. We need them to provide us with the services, the goods that we need, but yet we also need to keep those small businesses relevant and open. I think Barbara has the huge challenge of making 125th Street attractive. How many Apollos are there? I mean, Apollos is a place that the world recognizes and wants to just, anyone in the world would like to just step foot at the Apollo. The marketing for Harlem is easy. It's well known. It's all over. And yet what's on the ground now, the deterrents are sanitation and safety.
So what do you think about this new program that the city is rolling out with these new trash bins to prevent rodents? They haven't come over into Central Harlem yet. I think they're slated first for West Harlem. But as a business owner, do you understand the program? I think you guys should have received some notification. And how effective do you think it's going to be?
Well, I haven't really looked into it much, but the rodent situation is huge. And it's funny because if I call 311 on rodents, it's the person with the adjacent address who's going to be penalized for that, not the city. The city has to do a better job at tackling these issues. I have an exterminator come every single week at my place, and I try to keep my place as clean as I can, but they're everywhere, and that's a huge deterrent. I don't know. I think the city faces so many challenges. It's a city that's getting old. The transportation system is deteriorating. We have a lot of challenges, and then putting what comes first is becoming a challenge. But that's an issue that we deal with every single day. I would like to see more of these actions, more of the cleanup, however it may be. I'd like to see it more in our community because we don't see enough of it.
So we're going to take a little break here right now, a music break. You're listening to WHCR 90.3, our new show, 125th Street and Beyond. We're sitting down one-on-one with Leah Abraham, owner of Setapani. And so we'll be right back after the music break.
Okay, Barbara, back to you.
Thank you very much, Angela. You're listening to 125th Street and Beyond, WHCR 90.3, and we're having a one-on-one conversation with Leah Abraham, owner of Setapani Restaurant. In this segment, Leah, we're going to get into some very difficult questions. I would more than difficult, let's say sensitive. These are topics that we deal with and we have conversations one-on-one with each other. But it's time to start talking about them a little bit in the open. The first thing is I want to raise is second generational wealth. And there have been many businesses I have seen over the years on 125th Street that when the parent who own the business leaves for one reason or another, then the business is gone. And then it usually goes up for the highest bidder. And so I've noticed that you have started bringing your children into working in the business. And I think second generational wealth is really important. And I just wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
So I want to say that I was, one of the things that gifts I received from my family is the gift of having a base. I came to this country with nothing, but I had a standard for my lifestyle. I knew that I wouldn't go beneath a certain standard. And I taught my children that. I taught my children that they had to be, they had to be generous. They had to respect everybody. And they had to respect work. We worked. My father used to say, children have to be sharpened all the times. And my father was a great role model. I miss him every day. I spent my whole life running away from him because I was so scared of him. But I learned so much from him, and he really, I live by his rules today. I live by the 10 commandments he sent us to America with. And one of those was, work hard. You don't salvage, you don't save your energy. What do you save it for? Work hard. So I taught my children that no work was beneath them and they had to work hard. And I'm proud to say that I've seen my children work. I see them every single day, get up in the morning. They're not afraid. They're not, I've never had the challenge of begging them to do this or do that. They did it and they did it happily. And it was a part of life. We all work hard. We all get up and go to work, and we all make sacrifices. And this is what I have seen in my children. They don't take our efforts for granted. So I've slowly moved them. In fact, they moved in on their own a little bit. They've gotten they have their education. They have it out of the way. And my message to them has always been, whatever you do in life, be the best at that. Be the best that you can be. So that's what I see my children doing. And I know that should anything happen, that they can take this to the next level. And I'm proud to say that I've at least achieved that.
So, but you've also been able to keep them interested in the restaurant, even though they have a lot of different interests. I know them and have met them, and they all have different interests. And so what happens a lot of times is kids go to college and come back, and they don't want to be a part of what their parents have created. And this is one of the ways that we lose Black businesses. It has happened on 125th Street and throughout the community when that interest isn't there. And so you have not only taught them to work hard, but you, for some reason, have gotten them to be able to be interested in Setapani as well. So they do their other things, but they still work with the restaurant. And I just want to commend you for that, because we need Setapani to stay in this community. You keep saying to me, Barbara, oh, I'm tired of it. Maybe I'm going to go away. And I keep trying to explain to you, each one of you, your husband, yourself, your daughter, and your son bring a different flavor to Setapani. So, just hope you keep that going. The next thing I would want to bring up, another tough topic, is gentrification. And gentrification, what I'm finding is definitely, we don't want to say it's not real, but the word is used so loosely all the time, and it make one think that there are no opportunities and no way to get in. And I think from my perspective, we need to start looking at 125th Street more than just retail. Retail is the hardest part of the whole business, spectrum. Everyone get their money first, except the retailer. If they don't sell it, they eat it. And so it's hard for everyone. But we have offices here. We have people who are brokers. We have doctors. We have developers. We have people who are licensees. Learning the whole spectrum of what business on 125th Street is about. Then you see opportunities, like you became a property owner on 125th Street. And then some of the news articles just don't tell the truth. It's surface information. Like if you see a development coming up and they say Target is coming and Trader Joe's is coming, we're being gentrified, but we don't pay attention to the Urban League is going to be in there. Jazzmobile is going to be there. We're getting a national museum. So, I would like for you to just talk about, from a business perspective, when, how you deal with this whole concept of gentrification, and do you see any opportunities, or is it as bleak as what everyone is saying? We're all going to be pushed out, from your perspective.
Power is always in the hand of the owner, right? So that's a reality of life. However, I remember when we first moved to Harlem, there were no groceries. There was only Pathmark. And I remember when Best Buy opened, and people were thrilled to have a grocery store in this neighborhood. There are certain things that it was a desert. In many ways, it was, the bodegas didn't fill the void. They were expensive. And yet they became, these brands that opened became gentrifiers. Not all of them are created equal, but this community needs services. There was no place to go and buy a blouse if you have an event or you needed something close by. The whole city is serviced. Everything was accessible, except in Harlem, you didn't have those things. So I'm glad that these businesses have opened, and I know that they do really well. Pre-COVID, a lot of these businesses did well on 125th Street and depended very much on the community. Everybody who lives in the neighborhood needs these things, and we're happy to have those things. So I think, gentrification is an interesting word, and it's really not in the hands of the small businesses. It's more of a, it's more of a political word that's in many ways abused, I think. And I know this is challenging, but I can't stress enough that being denied those services doesn't help us either.
Well, I agree with you. And I think it comes down to the balance, and also too, it's not going to happen by osmosis. There has to be, a strategy, for inclusion. And that's what we tried to do with the cultural bonus. The cultural bonus was to bring in cultural uses and performances that would create, a creative industry that could spur all small businesses. It's a great concept, and we're still working hard to make it happen. But one of the things that also needs to happen is government has to meet us halfway, and government and business have to become closer in the dialogue when we're creating all these policies, because a lot of stuff go on paper, but then when you come to a business person making a decision, if the return on investment isn't there, then they don't use it, whether it's a good policy or not. So there's been some conversation. We have a real estate development committee, and we've been looking at whether or not incentives could be provided to owners for small businesses to allow small businesses to have space on 125th Street. And I think, Leah, with you as a small business and understanding this, being a part of this conversation, it's something I feel the bid needs to continue to pursue. Just wanted to hear your thought on that. That's my thought as a practitioner, and I have to listen to my board members, but I'm throwing it back to you, because we do recognize that we need to make opportunities available, but when you come down to the dollars and cents and all the challenges, it's just not that easy.
It's not that easy. And, we as a building owner, I am careful to make sure that I keep my place occupied. Otherwise, I can't pay my mortgage. I mean, that's a reality of my life. And I've worked hard, and I've made just the assessment in itself is above and beyond the taxes. So it's expensive to maintain a building. It's expensive to have tenants stay, and we've had all this real estate up and down challenges that we faced. I can't afford to open on 125th Street because it's just not affordable, and it's not affordable anywhere. It's Upper West Side is not affordable. This is the challenge of New York City. I think for me particularly, the challenge is keeping that balance of maintaining what we have in Harlem and making it viable. That's a huge challenge. We've done that with marketing. We've done that with promoting what we have in the community. We may need to do a better job at that, but that's what keeps it interesting. And keeping the culture, that's indigenous culture here. This is the mecca of Black culture, and keeping that alive is crucial.
So now another tough topic: the homelessness and addiction, drugs, and the impact on your business. I know you've had several breakthroughs. I know I've been there when there have been disturbances in the businesses, and it's a major challenge for owners of businesses because no one wants to call the police to address situations where people need help. But how do you protect your employers? How do you keep employers' morale up? How do you retain employers when we have this problem that is taking place in our community right now? We're doing a lot of work to try to address it, but we still have a lot of work to do. And in the meantime, you have to still do business day to day. So those are three biggies.
Yeah, that has been the biggest challenge I've faced this year, post-COVID. I have to say, that in the wintertime, I changed my hours. I had a young woman who came in and opened the restaurant in the morning. It wasn't safe, so I had to open later. In the summertime, things are different, and then the problem becomes other times of the day. But in the morning, I had to change so I make adjustments to the best way I can to protect my employees. I try to train them, but every day is a new day. I mean, I have had I've had horrible situations happen at Setipani, people getting hurt, someone almost killed me with a bottle, guns pulled out. It's just been the challenges that we face have almost been debilitating. It's a lot, and I'm optimistic and hopeful that things will change, but we have to address this issue. we have, and it's not the people that we recognize. It's people coming from everywhere. It's people who are really mentally unstable. They need help. I mean, we read about it in the news every single day. So we really need to clean this.
So how helpful is the city? I know you have relationships with the commanding officer at the 28th precinct and the response, because we don't want it to seem like nothing is being done and people are working. So you want to say a little bit about the working relationship with the NYPD.
Yes, it's actually been, I remember when I first came here, there was a strong relationship with the 2-8, and then there was this huge gap, and here we are again. The issues are bigger, but there is presence. We see, I know that we don't see as many cops walking up and down the streets, but I know that this commander is very aware of that situation. I know he has his ear to the ground. He's there. And he hasn't been there for a long time, but we've had several relationships, several conversations. He's been present. He's from the neighborhood. He understands more than any of us how to tackle this issue. But I think it's bigger than all of us, and it's going to take time.
Exactly. And so now that brings us to the hot topic of the day, the cannabis dispensary on 125th Street. And a lot of what you are talking about is some of the reasons why we feel that this is the wrong location, because we're still working we've stabilized 125th Street, but we definitely haven't moved it out of, the danger zone yet, to where people feel comfortable enough to where they want to stay. The conversations are still going on about, do we stay, do we leave, how to make people feel comfortable. Our footfall counts, the pedestrian footfall counts are half of what it was before. We have like about 32 vacancies. So we see the cannabis dispensary in this location at this particular time is a pile-on of all of the other problems we have. Not to say that it's not going to be a well-run operation inside the store, but 125th Street attracts everybody coming, and managing it is hands-on, day for day. It's just not happening automatically. There are a lot of people who will be stressed by this. And I wanted you to talk about your opinions, because as many opinions, we need to get as many opinions on the table about this topic.
I strongly agree. I don't think it's the right location. I think it's adding a problem to an area that already has huge problems, and we're doing everything, but we're just compounding it now. So I do think, I hope that it's moved. I hope we find a better location for it. But 100%, I don't think that's a place for it.
And on a little lighter note, I'm in love with the Patatonis. And so you just have to say a few words. You're doing such creative things with the Patatonis. And you've recently, particularly over the holidays, you got mentioned in the New York Times. It was it Saks Fifth Avenue that had it in their windows? And you now have toast. French toast made with Patatonis. So we have to talk about it. It's one of my favorite foods at your restaurant.
So, panettone is a holiday bread that we make during Christmas. And I'll tell you, it's this is when I say I love my husband, because my husband makes panettone takes 36 hours to make. It's a labor of love. Nobody makes artisanal panettone, but I love panettone, and Nino makes it whenever I ask him to make it. When my children got into the business, I would ask, and every time he makes a batch, he can't make just 2. He has to make 98 or however many he makes. So it's a lot of work to make it, but he would make it, and then we started doing the panettone. And then my daughter came into the business and decided, why don't we make panettone all year round? So we now have a panettone of the month. And that was, the Italian community were up in arms when they heard this. And, we got all kinds of criticism from the community, but fast forward, it became nationwide and even global. Bottega Veneta endorsed it, and we were in their window as one of the best artisanal panettones. And she is now receiving actually an award in Italy for this concept of having panettone all year round, a different flavor of the month. So it's a story of love, and it's a story of hard work, and experimenting and pushing culture beyond its boundaries.
So you are listening to WHCR 90.3. This is a new show, 125th Street Beyond. And our guest today is Leah Abraham, owner of Sedapani. So we're going to talk now about promoting 125th Street. 125th Street is a vital retail and entertainment district. And Leah, you're so important because you are chair of the Marketing and Promotion Committee. And you came up with this idea that we needed to meet weekly. So we have been meeting weekly now, going on at least 2.5 years, to discuss how to market and promote 125th Street, but more importantly, that beyond part of how to make connections. We've made connections in a partnership with MMPCIA, and we've also done some really exciting programs. What I want you to do now is to put forth your vision for marketing and promoting 125th Street, and particularly why you feel is so important to promote 125th Street with the rest of Harlem, and bring in other neighborhoods into the work that we're doing.
So I think of 125th Street as that artery that we all need to go to visit, to support, for the arts, for the shopping, for what's available on 125th Street. There's so much on 125th Street, and yet it feeds beyond what's on it. I think I have customers who come to Sedapani and say, well, this is my first time in Harlem, when can I go? Where's the Apollo? So you give them directions to go to the Apollo, but then along the way you have, the church across the street, which is a treasure, an architectural treasure. There's one, there's so many of these things throughout Harlem that go unnoticed. And I think historically people are creatures of habit. They go from their house to the train and don't really go beyond and discover the rest of their community. And I think there's so much to discover. I walk everywhere at all hours, and I feel comfortable walking with my children. I mean, my children see me at 2:00 in the morning. I forget my key, and I'm walking back to the restaurant, and I feel comfortable. And every day I discover something. So I think 125th Street has a lot, and it can also be supported by so much. It goes beyond. This is all part of this greater Harlem that we want to promote. What I've learned about promoting is that everything I've learned from my children, and I've seen that social media is it, and the other greater part is building relationships and collaborations. That's huge, and that's one of the things that we've started to do, and we've seen success.
Yes, and so we built relationships with the Mount Morris Community Improvement Association, and through that partnership, we also have created the first Harlem Brixton Twinning, where we took people from Harlem to Brixton in London, and people from Brixton came here so we could share best practices and also learn from each other. And that experience was really rewarding on both sides. And Leah, you were a great part of that. You even took your children. And so this whole global, which is what we're looking at, global local focused tourism between communities that are similar is what we are pursuing. And I think what that does is it enhances our ability to bring the local neighborhood into the mix. And so, can you just let people know about your experience when you went to Brixton, some of the interesting things that you saw that were some of the similarities that we're struggling with here?
So Brixton was amazing, and one of the things that, you know, Brixton is very small and they can do a lot more, and they have government funding, so their program, their bid is very different than our bid. Their area is very different than our area. We're much larger, and they have the challenge of a multicultural Black community. And so those conversations, Barbara, you have to, those conversations were amazing. We had great collaborations and great conversations around culture, around art, around just keeping it real. It was nice to see what they were doing, and it was, you know, there are many things that I wish we could do here, but we don't have the same structure that they have, so it's a little bit more challenging. But that was, I think it was an eye opener for many of the Harlemites who went there, and the conversations around Black. You know, it's interesting that in America, Black is defined as one thing, and when we went to Brixton, you know, there were very different, many Blacks that were in the room, and those conversations were great. So I really enjoyed my stay. It was an eye opener for my children, who had never been in an environment like that. So it was overall, it was wonderful to have that collaborative effort.
And they truly embraced us. They even built a stoop to have events and take pictures, and they duplicated a Romare Bearden collage, you know, in their area. They did a whole Harlem Brixton needlepoint. It was a great experience.
And I just want to add that for them, Harlem was their Mecca, you know.
Yes.
So that was really important to see that it was always a reference to Harlem.
So we have 1 minute, and in this 1 minute, I want to thank you, but also give you the opportunity to give a little commercial for Harlem Holiday Lights and our theme for what's coming up this year.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say quickly that I'm so glad that I'm on the bid, but I'm so glad to have met Barbara. Barbara is truly, for those of you who don't know her, is a true force of nature. I have the privilege of talking to her every week. The Harlem Holiday Lights is in her blood. She's done an amazing job, and you know, Harlem should not be dark during the holidays, and she's made sure that happens year after year. Whether we have the budget, whether we don't have the budget, she's made sure that those lights are on. And we need your support, and I hope that you all participate in making it brighter this year.
Thank you very much, Leah Setapani, Leah Abraham Setapani. We have enjoyed this conversation with you. You're listening to WHCR 90.3, 125th Street and beyond, every Monday from 4 to 5. Thank you, listeners, and goodbye.
Thank you.